I think we should talk about some breaking news we have during this podcast, Ryan, because it's going to be the biggest news from MLB trade deadline, and it just came down. Jeff Passan's got the bomb. It looks like Juan Soto and Josh Bell are headed to the San Diego Padres, and it looks like the Nationals got the whole coop: Mackenzie Gore, Robert Ansel, C.J. Abrams, James Wood. They got all the prospects back from the Padres, as they should have in the Juan Soto deal. Plus, the Padres are also getting Josh Bell in the deal. What's your instant reaction to the mega trade finally going down?
It just feels kind of light, and that sounds strange because it sounds strange, but when you factor in that they're getting Josh Bell and Juan Soto, and they trade a ton of prospects, obviously, but let's face it, like prospects typically don't pan out, at least not all of them, obviously. They traded away their 1, 4, and 10 prospect, I believe it was, as of what we know right now. And they also gave away Mackenzie Gore, who's been solid, but by no means has lit the world on fire in the major leagues. So whenever you give away your 1, 2, 4, and 10 prospect for Soto and Josh Bell, and you have Soto for 3 pennant chases, that is well worth it if you are the San Diego Padres. If you can afford to do it and your ownership signs off on paying the big bucks and taking on this team that now has Soto and Machado and Tatis and everyone else, then trading away 1, 2, 4, 10 for Soto and Josh Bell, 2 players who are going to enhance your lineup in a massive way because now you get Hosmer out of that lineup and everything else.
Yeah.
And now you get Soto in that lineup. To do that and only get Mackenzie Gore, your 1, 2, 4, 10, that is a steal for the Padres, all things considered, especially, again, because you get 3 tries at it if you're San Diego, not just one.
Yeah. And I don't disagree with the prospect take because I'm like the anti-prospect guy over here on the podcast. I'm like, yeah, if it's a superstar, then you trade your prospects because I think it depends on the level of talent. I'm not just trading anybody. I'm not doing what the D-backs did where they traded the number 1 pick and a bunch of guys for Shelby Miller. Shelby Miller's not the kind of guy to do that prospect deal for. But Juan Soto, who is maybe could be a top 10 talent all time in Major League Baseball. He's like the king of walks right now in Major League Baseball, right next to Mike Trout. You give up everything for that dude. You give up the farm. And if you're the Padres, like, yeah, the 3 pennant chases you mentioned, but like him and Tatis just together and Manny Machado, like people forget Manny Machado is only 30 years old. This is still someone that's like pretty young and still in the prime of his career. So the trio of Machado, Soto, and Tatis, like that's going to be another 7, 8 years. And just the duo of Soto and Tatis, like that could be another 10 to 15 years of just those two together. So if you're a San Diego Padres fan, like you got your trio of stars locked up for the future. Maybe Juan Soto's not locked up yet, but I don't see why the Padres wouldn't. Like if you're the Padres or just any team right now in the open market and you see Juan Soto, like what number are you comfortable giving Juan Soto, do you think? Would you go the 14 years, $500 million route? Like what's your philosophy when it comes to contract and big money deals?
Yeah, and that's the thing. You get 3 years before you even worry about the contract for Soto and extending him. Like if he wants to leave and just doesn't like San Diego, he's still under control for 3 years. Like this is not a rental by any means. So that's why I feel like the prospect thing is not a big deal because the odds are at least one of those top 10 guys aren't going to pan out. And if the rest of them do, that's great for Washington. But you also gave up one of your other big commodities in Josh Bell and took back Eric Hosmer. That was just announced 1 second ago. So the final haul ends up being, the final haul ends up being Mackenzie Gore, Robert Hazley, C.J. Abrams, James Wood, Jurin Susan, and then Eric Hosmer to the Nationals. That's it for Soto. And it's not just Soto, it's Bell too. Because if you would have traded Bell to the Astros, you would have gotten probably their 4th and 5th prospect without having to take on Hosmer's contract either. Like, I don't know. It just seems a little bit light considering the hype that there was around this epic return for Soto.
Doesn't it always kind of feel light when you see these superstar trades, though? When you look at the Mookie Betts deal, you look at the Nolan Arenado deal, you could look at the Paul Goldschmidt deal. Like most of these deals, the Manny Machado deal, like there's really like I pound this point a lot on the pod. Like, don't trade your franchise superstars if you don't have to. If the star is like, yeah, I'm leaving next offseason, you could either trade me now or I could walk away from nothing. Then, yeah, at that point, if you're getting a guarantee I'm not returning from your star, then you trade them. But if it's just because you don't want to pay the dude or you guys are just like maybe just a little bit apart on contract negotiations, like I think you have to do whatever you can to keep superstar players in the building because you never get the return back you want. And if you or trading for a bunch of prospects back, like you're hoping one of those guys hits into the player you just traded away. And most likely that's just not going to be the case. So just from the idea of trading prospects for superstars, I've never just been a big fan of trading away my superstar for prospects. I think in the end of the day, yeah, most of those deals aren't going to work out. Like you look at the Tigers, they had to start spending money this offseason because they blew up their team back in 2017, 2018, and they've really haven't been able to they haven't been able to rebuild, through the draft, through free agency, whatever. They're now starting to spend money to try to rebuild that organization. But the Verlander deals and the Max Scherzer deals and the JD Martinez's deals, like those guys didn't really net back any prospects that are helping that team right now. So that's why I'm like, yeah, just give me superstar players. I feel like if I was a GM, I feel like I would just fleece teams all day because it doesn't take a lot to get a superstar player from another team when you've seen the recent deals that's happened in the last couple of years.
Yeah, and two, it's different for every sport because especially in baseball, the Nationals had a top 5, top 10 player in the sport when Juan Soto, whatever you want to market him as, however you want to rank him, and they're terrible.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's obvious that if only one or two of these prospects that you get back pan out, that's not going to help your win total all that much. It's everything you do in the margins that's going to help you. Now, in basketball, one guy can carry you to the finals. One guy, if you get one just superstar out of your 7 first-round picks that you got back for trading away your top guy, then it was all worth it. And you have 9 years of control of that guy versus, 2 years of control of your superstar. But in baseball, whenever it takes 26, honestly, with injuries and stuff, it takes like 30 guys to go win a World Series, and it takes the flukiness of it. I mean, you're talking to the host of Locked On Royals who watched 2 fluky World Series runs that ended in 1 ring. So I know all about the flukes, and luckily the Royals benefited from them. But when it takes the fluke and it takes and it takes where even if you have a top 5 guy in baseball, you're not gonna automatically be in the playoffs, much less the World Series. Look at the Angels, who has 2 of them over there, and they can't get to the playoffs. To where you're right. I don't see the point in it in baseball, especially. In other sports, it makes more sense, but when you switch the mindset into baseball, it doesn't really make that much sense at all.
I think the biggest issue in baseball, it's hard to figure out the value of these superstar players and how much they should go for. There's no standard in baseball where you can look at this trade. I should then get this back in return for this player based off this trade that happened over here. Because in basketball, you look at these superstar trades and it's like the return makes sense. When you look at the AD trade, you got back all the players and all the prospects. Rudy Gobert trade, you got back all the picks, and pretty much any superstar trade that's happened in basketball, you're getting back a couple young players, and you're getting back a whole bunch of first round picks. There's a framework to work with when you look at NBA superstar trades. In baseball, it just whatever the team feels like doing basically that day is going to be the trade. Some teams are very aggressive and they're getting back 3 of the top 5 prospects or something like that, and some teams are like, just give us back 1 blue chipper and just give us back 1 guy we've seen on the major league level, or just give us back 2 guys we've seen on the major league level, and neither one of them have to be blue chip prospects. So I think trying to figure out the value of trades in baseball for superstar players, it's just really tough because there's no framework in baseball as opposed to the NBA or the NFL when we see superstar trades go down. And it's trade deadline day, so we're going to see a whole bunch of other trades going on. But if you want to place a bet of where you think the next trade is going to be, who you think is going to be moved next, you need to head to betonline.net because it's the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your betting needs. Find all your favorite sports and events at the #1 online source for odds, lines, and games. Find reviews and news of every league, including Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, esports, and even golf. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for your sports wagering information. From live in-game betting, scores, and podcasts, they have you covered. Head to BetOnline today or use your mobile device to learn more about the action happening today. BetOnline, where the game starts. Now, Ryan, so far there's been a lot of craziness from the trade deadline. And is there a move you like, a team that you think is a winner so far? Or you could even take it another way. Is there a move you hate or a team that you're just like, what the hell are you doing right now?
Yeah, I find it interesting about the Brewers trading Hader.
Okay.
I know that Hader's had kind of a struggle of late, and I think that there was a stat where he's been bad in the last month. But still, the Brewers are a division leader right now, and they're firmly in the playoffs right now. And as I just mentioned, I'm a firm believer that baseball, even more so than any sport besides maybe hockey, you just have to get into the dance because you'll have a ball perfectly wrap around the third baseline like Salvador Perez did in the wild card game. You'll have a Gold Glove shortstop boot a ball and spark a rally for you. You'll have just Lucas Duda not be able to throw to home plate like any little leaguer could. Like you'll have those moments where a team that's not as good or a team that's not the best team win a World Series because they were just in the right place at the right time. To where if I have a chance to go to the playoffs, I'm going to take that chance and I'm going to take it with my best guys. And I think that Hader, even though he struggled recently, is your best guy. So I find that interesting to sell. And again, it's different in every sport. Like if you're the 8th seed in basketball, you're not going to win the NBA Finals. So if you trade one of your best guys, it's not that big of a deal. But in baseball, whenever it's so fluky and so random, I would have liked to see a division leader keep one of their best guys. But other than that, I do like the Yankees picking up Benintendi a lot. I think that he really rounds out that lineup, especially now that Soto's off the market and going to the Padres. But so far, this trade with San Diego has been my favorite because I think that return is not backbreaking. That return's not going to end the Padres organization or hamper them for 20 years. It's going to get you 3 pennant chases at least with Soto. And if you re-sign him, then there's no more debating if you won or lost, no matter how the prospects turn out, because they're not going to be top 5 players in baseball. They're just not. And that's what Juan Soto is. So I think that the San Diego trade is now the number one, and I have a hard time seeing anyone top it.
Yeah, I mean, the Padres are definitely the winners of the deadline so far when you combine all their moves. But I feel like I actually have the zag on the Josh Hader deal because I feel like it all depends on how you value closers. I feel like closers have become kind of overrated in today's game. I feel like there's a lot of guys that throw 95 to 100 miles an hour that you could put in the back end of your bullpen and be a pretty serviceable closer for you. So if I'm the Brewers, like I actually didn't hate the move from their perspective. When I first saw it, I was like, whoa, the Padres are getting Josh Hader, like another phenomenal move. But when I actually saw the return, like I didn't hate it for the Brewers. Like Taylor Rogers, I feel like is like the poor man's, the middleman's Josh Hader in terms of his strikeout rate. Got Dinelson Lamet, who has struggled with injuries the last couple of years, but back in 2020 or whatever it was, he was like a Cy Young candidate who flashed a lot for the Padres. He got back like a number 7 prospect in the organization, like a number 25 prospect. Like if you don't think you're going to re-sign Josh Hader, like I didn't think it was a terrible return for him. And if you don't think closers in general are as valuable as they might have been back in the day, like I don't hate the move. I feel like there's a lot of relievers that you could pick up and put in the back end of your bullpen to be a closer. And just looking at like Josh Hader's numbers, like of course he's like basically the best strikeout artist of maybe ever, but in terms of run prevention, 2 of the last 3 years, he's been good, but he hasn't been elite at it. So maybe he's not. Maybe the strikeout numbers inflate a little bit of our perception of Josh Hader. I don't know. We'll see what he does with San Diego Padres. Is if he gets back to what he was doing the first month and a half of the season, where he literally had like a 0.0 ERA, then he could just shut me up right away. But he did just come off a pretty bad month, so it is pretty interesting. But the Yankees are also loading up, like you said, the Benintendi deal, the Frankie Montez deal was really nice. I think the team that I hate the most so far from this trade deadline, I've talked about it a bunch on this podcast, is just the Boston Red Sox. I just hate everything they're doing. I just hate the whole vibe and energy around the organization right now. You trade Mookie Betts away. That pretty much started it all when we brought the new GM and front office in, and you're like, we're just going to change our whole philosophy. I know we have a core right now of great talent and a team that could win a championship, but no, we're going to trade Mookie Betts, and then guess what? A couple years from now, we're going to be 2 games away from the World Series, and instead of trying to improve our team, we're going to tell our best players, yeah, we might not re-sign you, Rafael Devers and Xander Bogaerts. And then as we get closer to the trade deadline, we're just going to start selling off our best players. Vasquez, who's our longest tenured player. Goodbye, Vasquez. JD Martinez, he's available. He's on the block. Like, if I'm the Red Sox, like you had this core of great players starting with Mookie Betts. And if you just kept that core and kept adding to it, you could have had a consistent championship contender and be at least in the championship series probably for the next 5 years. And even just going back to this past offseason, if you just picked up a starting pitcher or 2 that was of value, or maybe a couple of relievers, and just grounded out some of the edges to your team. Like you were 2 games away from the World Series last year, and now you're like, let's just blow it up and start all over and start the rebuilding process. Like I don't understand why they have to rebuild when they have such great players on their team already.
Yeah, and that sentiment is shared by everyone I've seen that covers or likes or is a fan of the Red Sox. So yeah. I think that you're spot on there.
Yeah, it's been an interesting trade deadline so far. And I think the baseball trade deadline, I think it's pretty good. How would you compare it to the NBA trade deadline? Because I know you do the Locked on Thunder podcast as well. So which one for you is more exciting or appealing? Because I feel like baseball trade deadline might actually have the NBA trade deadline.
This is the area where I think that baseball's trade deadline and baseball in general wins over every other sport. I think that, I mean, I can't touch on hockey. I don't know much about hockey at all, but in terms of football, basketball, baseball, this is the area that baseball thrives, because I think that every year we see a guy, not of the caliber of Juan Soto, because he's top 10, but every year we see a guy that casual fans know and that casual fans will like, and that will like get them excited that he's got traded. In basketball, we do see sometimes, James Harden get traded for Ben Simmons or whatever, but most of the time, you're trading a back end starter for a back end starter. You're trading a sixth or seventh man for a bench player, a future pick or whatever. But in baseball, it feels like there's at least one big splash every year that the casual baseball observer can rally behind and then kind of get reinvested into the sport for the last couple of months before the World Series and the playoffs. So I would give it to baseball. I think it's just a more exciting trade deadline, and more happens. And it happens, just more frequently that big moves happen. In basketball and football, there's outliers, of course, but it just feels like they have that big move to really punch you in the mouth every year the way baseball does.
Yeah, it's probably just a little bit easier to make trades in baseball because you got all these prospects you could pick from. They could just throw into deals. Basketball, they just care about their picks so much. It's just a little
And
bit
you don't
harder
have to
make a
match
deal.
salaries either.
Oh, yeah, that's a huge one. Yeah, not matching salaries, because that basically holds up most of those deals in basketball. So, yeah, I would say the baseball trade deadline is a little bit more exciting. I think a couple of seasons ago, the big prize from the NBA trade deadline was like Andre Drummond or something like that. So, I would definitely say the baseball deadline is more interesting. Ryan Stiles of Locked On Royals breaking it down for us on the trade deadline. Emmanuel Rivera coming back to the D-backs and all that fun stuff. Where can the Locked On Diamondbacks listeners find you on social media and everywhere else?
You can find me on Twitter at Rylan_Styles, and also follow the show on Twitter anywhere you get your podcasts, or YouTube, or anywhere else on Lockdown Royals. So check it out over there as well.
Yep, and for Locked On Royals, at Creator Times 24 for my personal account, or look up Locked On Diamondbacks on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and all your podcasting platforms. Ryan, sir, thank you for hopping on today, and I guess I'll catch you next time. That is the intro.